let's talk a little Nick Saban. There's some good and some bad here that I want to report to you from Nick Saban, who is now ESPN analyst Nick Saban, not the Alabama football coach, former Alabama head football coach. Let's start with the bad news here. Okay, we'll get you the bad news first. Here's the bad news, and that is that Nick Saban was doing some whining about the Big 12. I'm going to call it whining. I have not, in fairness, I have not heard the specific quote. Like, I have not heard him say it. And a lot of times when you just see it in the characters on Twitter, it can be a little misleading because you have not heard the question. You've not heard like the full context of everything. You haven't heard tone of voice. All of those things can definitely matter. But let's get to the topic at hand here, which is just what he said about the Big 12 through TCU and, I suppose, K-State. So Nick Saban made a comment at SEC Media Days on the 2022 playoff. Quote, I still have a little pet peeve about we didn't get in and TCU did. And Kansas State beat them, and we beat Kansas State by 25 or 30 points in the bowl game. Who had the better team? Okay, Nick, well, there are a lot of ways that I would go with this. One, a bit surprised that a guy that's had as much success as you is still lamenting that, but hey, Alabama did lose to Michigan in the college football playoff this past year. Who was the last team to beat Michigan? Oh, it was that TCU team that he's talking about right there. They were the last team to actually beat the Wolverines, which you would think would speak to how good TCU actually is as a squad, but I digress. And Nick Saban as a coach, I'm sure, you remember the losses more than the wins. Guys that are wired like that probably do. But still, I'm like, what? How is this? There was probably a question that pushed it somewhat there. I will acknowledge that. But I'm like, what are we doing still talking about this 2 years later when you're retired now? Like, feels like there's a lot of other things to be really worried about here, Saban. But a lot of TCU fans jumped all over this, and I thought did a great job bringing up the fact that, like our friend Horned Up Frog, okay, to quote Archer, phrasing, Horned Up Frog, I still have a little pet peeve about the 2014 college football playoff. We got left out, and Bama got in, and Ole Miss beat them, and we beat Ole Miss by 39 points in the bowl game, and Alabama lost to Ohio State in the playoff. Who had the better team? That's pretty good. That's well done from Horned Up Frog. He did it in the exact same wording and cadence of what Nick Saban did, but said, look, in 2014, buddy, you got in. TCU, we got left on the outside looking in. We clobbered Ole Miss in a bowl game, beat them by 39 points. You guys lost to them in the regular season. Not only that, you didn't even win a game in the playoff. We at least won a game in the playoff. So why don't we talk about 2014? And I imagine we did not get a Nick Saban quote about 2014 there. So to me, this part of it was sort of like this is like the whiny level of the SEC where they're a child that's not getting their way like they virtually always have. And this is not like a rage against the SEC, rail against the SEC and what they are segment. The SEC is unequivocally the best football conference out there. There's no doubt about that. You are a supreme hater if you would really argue that. It is true. It is the best. It is definitely the best. But that does not mean that you get the benefit of the doubt in literally every single scenario. That does not mean that results of games don't matter. Nick Saban, do not lose 2 games. You'd be in the college football playoff. TCU went undefeated in the regular season. They lost a very close game in the Big 12 championship game to a team that they had, by the way, already beaten. They went to the playoff, and they very much justify that they belonged by beating Michigan, a team that would go on to still not lose a game since then, including winning a national championship and beating Alabama on the way to do so. So to me, well, the SEC is great. You don't always deserve the benefit of the doubt in situations like this. And Bama, you've gotten the benefit of the doubt plenty of times. Plenty of times. How about 2011? Let's bring another Big 12 example home here. 2011. What happened in 2011? Alabama got in by the hair on their chin. They got in that national championship game rematch against LSU, which was, it's like, why did we all have to watch that again? That was the year they played 9-6 in the regular season. And yet Oklahoma State got left on the outside looking in. They got the benefit of the doubt there based on how the system was set up after Oklahoma State's heartbreaking loss to Iowa State. It was just like percentage points in the BCS. You got the benefit of the doubt. As it was mentioned already, 2014, you got the benefit of the doubt. So it didn't quite work out one time when the Big 12 had an unbeaten team in the regular season. Like, chill out, man. Chill out. You got a lot of trophies on the wall. You've got pelts up everywhere. Just enjoy those. Let's not be complaining about 2022 here anymore. And by the way, it's a great team. That 2022 team is a great team. And one of my thoughts there was like, I think I saw that. Was it Manhattan Hell? One of the K-State Twitter accounts out there that is pretty good. I feel like put this out there. They're just like, geez, like K-State having to deal with motivated Alabama, that Alabama team, and motivated Will Anderson, Bryce Young and company actually being motivated in a bowl game. One of the worst draws that you could possibly have there, because Alabama did have somewhat of a chip on their shoulder after what had happened with all that. I mean, I digress. Look, they were clearly a much better team, but getting them at full strength and motivated there, that was tough. That was tough. So, yeah, I guess I forgot I had an analogy for this one. Nick Saban in this scenario. It's the dog that always gets a treat when he sits, right? I mean, the dog sits, gets a treat. One day, goes up to someone, sits. They don't have a treat for him. He's going to start barking, being like, wait, what the hell is this? I'm used to getting a treat. That's what I do. Like, we're the SEC. We exist. We get a treat. That's how it works. We exist. A treat is handed to us. This time, a treat was not. So we're going to bark. That's what we're going to do. Having said all of this, I do possibly regret to inform you. I guess it depends on how you really feel here. But Nick Saban did have a good take, too. Nick Saban had a good take. And this came from the Ross Dellinger article that we were just talking about. Nick Saban has a good take about the future of the sport. So it says, this is Dellinger, no matter the outcome of this new revenue sharing model, the structure's primary goal should be to incentivize parity, said Nick Saban, the former Alabama coach who now works as an analyst for ESPN. The NIL era, Saban contends, has created a lack of parity within the sport. The industry is on the way to a system of haves and have-nots. Saban, that's good. We were just talking about this like, hey, I don't think this is really going to bring the Big 12 closer, bring everybody closer. Saban is saying we should bring everybody closer. Get us a salary cap, incentivize parity. I heard Josh Pate the other day advocating for Nick Saban as a potential commissioner of college football. If these are the ideas that Saban is going to roll out there and say it really should be all about parity, I might be able to get behind endorsing Nick Saban as commissioner of college football. I would have thought beforehand he would just bow down to all his old buddies in the SEC, but maybe not. Maybe not. So look, Nick Saban does not appear to be all bad. I like that. Seems like he does, at least in some way, have the good of the overall sport in mind. He says, quote, I think players should be compensated, but I think they should be compensated in a way that this player is compensated under the same set of circumstances as that player is compensated that you're playing against. That's not the case now. A lot of people would come back and argue that's never really been the case, Nick. We've always had not direct revenue sharing payment to athlete disparities, but we've always had facility disparities, just money disparities all across the board. That's kind of what the sport is built on. That's a part of the beauty of the sport. And there is definitely truth to that. But there is also truth to this thing has kind of skewed out of proportion now, where you've got two leagues so much further ahead in terms of their revenue that it's creating more of a gap than we really have ever had in the sport. So Nick Saban clearly sees that and thinks, hey, we need to do something to try and change this a little bit. So I can get on board with that, Nick. I can get on board with that. You let me know if do I need to buy a campaign t-shirt? I'm not sure how exactly this would work, but if I do need to buy a campaign t-shirt, you just let me know.